Hitting the bar early today, I see.
Yeah, that's all vodka. It's just pure vodka. It's Friday.
Happy Friday. I guess it's something worth celebrating, right? Because you just got done with your trip, and
Yeah.
that's exciting. Before we get to that, I'll make a quick introduction. Thank you all for tuning in. Here, I'm joined by Colin, who wears multiple hats. He's the co-founder of freeport.app, also the founder of Ponder, which is a separate project, and then also an advisor to a lot of different projects. But for the purpose of today's conversation, we'll talk about Freeport and its work around real world assets. So, Colin, what's the big news you have to share?
Cool. We can leave the cannabis consulting stuff to a different conversation. Yeah. So on the Freeport front, I just got back from New York, and we're in final negotiations with an art group that wants to purchase the platform. And to give people context, Freeport is a platform where we took real physical artwork, fractionalized it, and then tokenized it to put it on chain. And we did it with SEC approval. So we spent the past, I don't know, 18 months, maybe almost 2 years at this point, because time is just flying by, building this company. And now we're sort of in the last legs of negotiations. I probably shouldn't be saying that because I'm jinxing myself, but I think we're pretty close to making it happen. So I'm pumped.
Knock on wood. Got to knock on wood.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the standing desk is made of some kind of horrible plastic for the environment, but it's fine. We'll consider it wood.
There you go. So physical goods is very difficult to legalize, right? In terms of tokenization, because we're hearing all of this talk about tokenizing bonds and treasury bills. And I feel like that side of tokenization is a lot further along from a regulatory perspective. How in the world are you able to work with the regulatory bodies to get this thing approved?
Yeah. So the first trick was not pretending to the SEC. That's the wrong word for sure. But making the SEC feel like what you're doing is very familiar to things that they've already done in the past, right? So there are these kind of offerings called Reg A offerings that let people, you create an entity and then you sell shares in that entity, like private sales. So it's not like Apple stock. It's more like, hey, I've got this private company. It's got a certain number of assets, and I'm going to sell these assets privately to people. Reg D does that just for accredited investors. This is the reason that accredited investors can get a lot of different investment opportunities that normal investors can't, because there are different types of private equity sales. But Reg A lets you do those similar types of private sales, but anyone can purchase them, right? So there's broad solicitation. You can market effectively anywhere. There are different rules that come along with that marketing for Reg A, but at its core, with Reg A, what you can do is take any asset, give it to a company, and then sell shares in that company. The reason that makes sense for crypto is because everything in crypto, when you start tokenizing anything, that's kind of what you're doing. Like when you buy Uniswap tokens or Aave tokens, it's kind of like owning a share in that company. In that case, it's governance rights over the treasury that they've got, right? So in this scenario, we're saying, hey, SEC, we're creating something that's super similar to this Reg A stuff that you've seen off chain, where people create an entity and then they sell shares in that entity. But we're just going to go ahead and turn those shares into tokens, right? So you go through this entire process with the SEC and you say, hey, all these things are going to look the same. The people are going to have the same rights. There will be this operating agreement for whatever the LLC is that people are owning shares in. They're going to basically engage with it in the same ways. But then we're going to add this little utility thing on the end, which is tokenizing it. And obviously, as you know, tokenizing something opens up all these different avenues, right? Like once you've got a token, well, it can interact with other things on the blockchain. It can be staked or it can be used as collateral. And a lot of those things are still in the works, like getting the SEC over the line to allow them to happen on chain. But the tokenization part, you can now get to. It's not super easy to go through this process, but you can basically get the SEC there by equating it to what they've done historically and then just adding a little nudge on the end, if that makes sense.
Not to make this whole conversation about regulation, but is Reg A where you're allowed to have like one person on the LLC, but if you have multiple, then at that point it's deemed a security?
No, Reg A is specifically, okay. So formally, it's actually an exemption from being a normal security is what's going on. Is you're going to the SEC and saying, hey, please give me the approval to issue these shares that are relevant or that are legal under this exemption that's called Reg A. And that's like a confusing thing to describe to people. So it's easier to just say like, yes, we have SEC approval to issue these shares. But no, it's not the one you're describing. It's basically it gives you this limit. So you can create an LLC or create a series of LLCs, is in fact what we were doing for each art piece, right? And you have up to a $75 million limit that you can issue each year. Just like a company is issuing shares, we're issuing shares in a company that just holds the artwork. But it's very similar to like our Reg A entities were all LLCs, as an example. And then our parent corp was a Delaware C corp. But again, maybe we don't need to go too much into the legal details.
So why are you going through all this trouble? Is it just something, ooh, it'd be great to put this on?
I hate myself. Yeah.
I mean, it seems like you obviously are a firm believer that this is not just the future, but there's real utility here, that you're solving for real problems here that are happening in the traditional market in regards to art.
Yes. So, okay. So the why is it's even maybe like a layer more abstract above that, or why I'm passionate about it. So when I look at blockchain, I think of how we're completely changing the paradigm of how we transfer value around as humans, right? Like you can have dollars, you can transfer those around, you can create some sort of derivative of a company, and you can transfer stocks around, you can have loans, you can have different types of like T-bills and bonds and things. These are all like abstractions and like different ways that we transfer value around, but they live within these constrained centralized systems for the most part. What blockchain does is it allows us to start transferring value around in like a net new way. So we start to be able to like create new organizations and transfer value between you, me, and someone else, or to like access the value of our assets by using them as collateral instantly with just smart contracts in the way, not other humans. When we start engaging with blockchain fully, I think what we're going to find is that humans are just more efficient, right? So like goal equals humans become more efficient at transferring value around, so we can grow more rapidly, make people happier around the world more rapidly, right? And one of the things that we've done with blockchain is we've created all this infrastructure right now that lets us do those things. So when you think about like Aave and you think about SushiSwap or Uniswap or things like Tokamak from like the last cycle, let's just say, all of those smart contract DeFi, all those DeFi smart contracts still exist, and they're robust and they allow for the transfer of value. But historically, it's just been tokens that are sort of like fluff or air, or that are derivatives of other derivatives of other derivatives that aren't based upon like real tangible things or human like energy output. So what we need to do now is fill all of those DeFi protocols with real tangible things and human energy output, so that we're now transferring things around more efficiently, value around more efficiently as a species. So like very top level, I want us to put value onto the blockchain, because then we'll all be more efficient, right? All humans will be more efficient because we'll be able to take one token that represents, a piece of my boat or my house and instantly swap it into a piece of art, and like not have to go through 4 or 5 different centralized layers to do that, right? So now we're operating in sort of greater harmony. So over time, I think that assets that aren't on blockchain are going to start to sort of fade in value or relevance. People are going to start to look at them and literally feel like this thing is less valuable because the way that I'm holding the value isn't easily transferable to other forms of value because it's not on chain. So I wanted to start bringing as many assets as I possibly could on chain, and art had precedent already. So there were already NFTs that were brought on chain. There are already cultural elements that are focused on art on chain. So rather than start with like boats or houses, because there's not like an equivalent there, right? But with NFTs, there was. So we said, all right, Freeport can be this conduit to bring value from off of the blockchain onto the blockchain. We'll start with artwork. We started with a collection of Warhols because it's a very obviously relevant artist that people are aware of, and because there's precedent on chain. That was a long-winded answer, but that's effectively why we created Freeport.
And when it comes to these pieces of art, like how do you get a hold of them? Do you even have access to them? How do you verify that you do have access to them? So I have a lot of questions around that.
Sure. So one of our earliest advisors, well, 2 of them actually are Warhol dealers in New York City. So one is a close family friend of mine. He actually got me my first puppy when I was like 5 years old. So I'm very, very close to him. And he's been working with this woman, Jane Holzer. If you Google Jane Holzer, she was a Warhol superstar when she was younger. Like she was Paris Hilton in New York City hanging out with Andy Warhol back in like the 60s and 70s. So she's an absolute badass. She's in her 80s. She has a massive collection of artwork, like a ridiculously massive collection of artwork. She's very well known in Warhol circles. So they came on as advisors and early investors. So that gave us access to sort of an unprecedented level of like really high quality artwork to start with that we know has been verified from sources that are sort of respected within the community. So without that, it would have been, frankly, way too difficult of a task to get Freeport started. We kind of needed that leg up, but yeah, that's how we got here.
And how do you view like the user onboarding experience? That seems to be a very hot topic right now with us kind of heading into the next bull run and trying to bring on the next billion users. How do you approach that?
Yeah. Oh man, it's it's difficult. With securities, it's difficult. I mean, if we talk about it generally for a second here, I think that onboarding is we're sort of rounding this corner where you can abstract away everything that's in blockchain, everything that's annoying in blockchain, right? So you can do account abstraction. You can have someone sign up with like their Gmail or with their Twitter account, right? Using Privy or some other service like that, or like third web wallets, and let people create a hot wallet that just exists and sort of represents their account. And we have L2s. Base is obviously the most sort of like popular one right now, or sort of let's say the most rapidly rising. But obviously there's Optimism and Arbitrum and Polygon and a bunch of others that aren't necessarily EVM. So we have the ability to create an account for someone without them even knowing about blockchain. We have the ability to have very low fee L2s, which means that we can use some sort of a separate wallet to pay for fees and allow people to, again, bypass that sort of hurdle when it comes to onboarding to crypto. And we're able to, paymaster, sorry, that's the word that I was thinking of. So we're able to create this entire experience now. I think we've just gotten to the point where we can create this entire experience where a consumer doesn't have to actually know that the thing is crypto. Now, I think that there, as I mentioned before, I think there will be value to people knowing that something is on chain because it's more permanent and you feel like you have better ownership of it, right? Because it's not just some centralized entity. It's actually you that owns the private keys. So I think we'll still need to market that, but we are rounding the corner to a place where you can just have a product that works and is utilizing blockchain on the back end so that your value can play nice with all the other forms of value on that blockchain. And that's awesome. I don't think that I've seen courtyard.io is pretty good at this, at sort of like having already abstracted that away, but I haven't seen a lot of really good experiences that totally abstracted away. So I think that's coming, but I also think we have this weird, we're in a little bit of a PR rut right now in that, like, even though we just had a little, like there was that crypto minor bull run that's kind of ending today. Even these bull runs aren't bringing people back into the crypto, making crypto like a positive thing for them. So we do really need to think about collectively, I don't know, just as a sector, how we're going to talk about crypto and how we're going to talk about the benefits of crypto and how we're going to be a little bit better at managing the PR surrounding it. And this, you know, when you ask about onboarding, I think one of the questions that comes to mind is, to what degree in the current environment do we just kind of like stray away from talking about crypto and just say, like, here's the product and it has these other benefits and those benefits are, you know, empowered by crypto? Or do we say, this is a crypto project, connect your wallet up here at the top? If I'm building in this environment, and this is separate from Freeport, I'm still probably building for crypto people for the next like 3 to 6 months, because I think that's where there's still a lot of activity in the Web3 space. But I'm knowing that like 6 to 18 months from now, I'm going to turn that corner and go to the full abstract route, right? Where it's like, hey, you're not going to know it's crypto unless you go into the advanced settings and you want to be the advanced user.
Yeah, you mentioned where do we start? Personally, I think that it starts with the dictionary. I think there's a few words that we need to replace. For instance, we interchangeably use DeFi and Web3, and we're so used to this and we have this knowledge, but most people get intimidated by these words. So personally, I think instead of using a word like DeFi, we should use something like internet finance, you know, something that is relatable to everyday user.
Yeah. And like another one is trustless. We say that our systems are trustless. To us, we now get that, like, oh, it doesn't require trust. To someone who's outside of crypto, they're like, oh, it's not trustworthy. It's a trustless system. It's like, and that's how they're marketing it. Why the hell would I want to like get into that? So there's a lot of things that I think linguistically could be changed and probably should be changed. I really like the term on chain, by the way, as a descriptor. So like, hey, we're going to move these assets on chain, or these activities are happening on chain, versus like Web3 or crypto, which I think are in a dark place right now publicly, as much as I really don't want them to be, and they shouldn't be.
Yeah, they are still big keywords whenever I do my YouTube algorithm. So
yeah,
they're definitely pretty active. What are your thoughts on some of these other chains that are supposedly primed and ready? Solana is making a comeback. Cardano is one of those chains that tends to be quiet, but there's a lot of interesting development happening there. I recently met with head of business development at book.io. Mark Cuban is an investor in them. They're a marketplace for book NFTs. So, I mean, there's a lot of interesting things happening around NFTs with other chains. Like, what are your thoughts on some of these other?
When I think about chains generally, there are three things, and you can like choose two, right? It's speed, it's security, and it's decentralization. And no one has gotten to the point of like allowing for all three of those things. Like Solana is great because it's very fast and it's secure, but it's not at all decentralized, right? Or it's not very decentralized whatsoever. Ethereum, I think, is doing a really good job of absorbing the learnings of like Terra, for instance, was pretty decentralized and was very fast, but I guess not that secure. There was a good blog post on this that I think Vitalik did. But I guess what I'm getting at is those are sort of the three things that you have to make decisions around when you're designing these blockchains. And at the end of the day, there are going to be tools that need some of those things more than they need others. So there will be blockchains like Solana is going to be great for what is the mobile company? They did like Wi-Fi internet, and now they're doing mobile phones, and it's like Solana power. Anyways, they're great for like high transaction. Sorry,
is it Helium?
Yeah, Helium. That's the one, right? So for things like that, Solana is going to be fantastic. If people don't really care that much about decentralization, I think those types of chains will be fantastic for very specific use cases. And then others will be better for the people that really are true to the ethos of decentralization. That like, if you really want to own your piece of on-chain art, as an example, then like Ethereum is probably the place for it to forever live right now, right? There are going to be cultural differences too. So like Zora chain just popped up, and they're just another L2, right? But because they have such a strong sort of NFT cultural influence, and because they're doing it for the artist, and because they've made some adaptations that allow for the distribution of royalties to artists and referrers in an interesting way, they're going to win like the culture battle, or it looks like they're winning the art culture battle to a large degree on L2s. But then you also have like Solana NFTs where people create their own bubbles of sort of culture and community that may not be based around like decentralization, but it's just like, hey, we got here early and we care about this. We made money and I'm now bought in forever. So like, it's hard to imagine a world in which there aren't at least 3 or 4 different chains. And I think there will probably be, a lot at any point in time, and maybe small ones that pop up here and there. But I would imagine we start to see aggregation like the post.com bust, right? Where it was like Amazon and Google, and a few others that came in and became very, very dominant. And my money currently is bet on EVM and EVM L2s. But I don't think like all the other ones are going to go away, if that makes sense.
Why do you think certain communities gravitate towards specific chains? You just talked about Solana and how they have a very strong NFT community. Is it more of the technology that is designed to cater to that type of community, or is it more of the marketing approach of that ecosystem saying, hey, we should go after these group of people?
I think it's a really good question, honestly. I think culture can be emergent from technology. So the way that the Ethereum foundation is set up, like the origination of Ethereum with Vitalik, the way the Ethereum foundation is set up, and the way that it's been managed over time, I think it's gotten better and better over time at being like legitimately decentralized. And probably at the start was a little bit more like Ethereum probably was centralized, and there are some questions like, was it a security or not a security? I do not think it should be a security, but so I do think that the technology though, and the decisions that the initial core group of people make will identify what the sort of product marketing spirit of the product is, and that will attract a certain type. But I also do think that happenstance matters in crypto. And when people get into something early and they're bought into it, and there's financial exposure in addition to the emotional exposure of being part of a social community, you can get people that are really, really sticky, right? Even if they see a solution that may be superior to the one they're currently on, they're like, well, my friends are here and my money's here, so I'm still going to go talk in public about the one that I'm just emotionally bought into. Crypto is awesome because it lets you have fun and make money at the same time. It's also like too powerful because it lets you make money and have fun at the same time and like engage with other people. So, at the end of the day, I do think, like Cardano has a separate community. It's much more like it almost feels like Cardano is publishing papers, right? Like scientific papers on the crazy advancements that they make because the tech is like, they care that much about the tech. You've got the EVM people that are just like, or especially the Ethereum people that are like really thinking about those three things that I mentioned before, like speed, security, and decentralization, and optimizing for security and decentralization. And then like, hey, we'll deal with speed later with like sharding or with, L2s and ZK rollups and things like that. And that creates a certain type of community as well that sort of like follows the Vitalik brand of things. Solana is much more VC backed, right? And that creates a different community that might be more financially oriented. I don't know. I don't want to just like judge all the different communities right now, I guess, but I do think the technology definitely influences that first initial culture. But then there can be people that sort of stick around even as the culture or the technology may change because of their sort of exposure to it.
Personally, I think that there will always be new chains because for VCs, especially during the bear market, when they look at where should we put our money, they're going to put their money in something that's going to be the safest yet given the highest reward. And the chains that have money, they're going to be able to entice new builders, right? So if I'm the foundation and I have money, I can attract new builders to come and build on my chain because I'm going to dangle that carrot in front of you. And also, by the way, you have access to all this real estate, basically. It's like sprawl in real estate, right?
Yep.
You go out further, you have more land, you don't have to bump shoulders with your neighbors. So personally, I think that there will always be new chains, but how do you think that Ethereum can, do you think Ethereum can adapt these new technological advances? Like, for instance, right now, modular chains, that seems to be a thing. Can Ethereum adapt that as we evolve?
Yeah, I think there's still enough plasticity within the Ethereum ecosystem to solve for the problems that are at hand. I think it does become more and more difficult over time as the code base becomes more and more like calcified, right? To be super agile and to compete with a lot of like chains that can take all the learnings from Ethereum and all the learnings from all the other L2s and say, fuck yeah, I'm going to create this next thing that can do X, Y, and Z better. But there is significant value in having tenure in the crypto space. Like think about Bitcoin's been around for, 13 years or something like that, maybe more than 14 years. I should know
2008, I believe, right? White paper was written in
15 years.
2009.
Yeah, something like that. And Ethereum for like maybe 7 or 8 years. I should know these numbers, but
15, I believe.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, I'm in the ballpark. I'm roughly in the ballpark. But there's something to that tenure, right? Like knowing that they have been functioning at relatively high quality, and there haven't been too many like massive fork issues or like like community questions that are like horribly divisive. That's really, really important, right? Because now you're looking at, yes, what are the technological foundations, but then how much value is locked there and how much trust do we have in the future trajectory of this thing? So while Ethereum is like this kind of hard to change behemoth, it's also a much more trustworthy entity. And I think, when you look at large sums of money that are going to come into these things, yeah, it'll be VCs that are backing the L1s because it's like infrastructural and they're greedy. It's part of their job is to say, we need 100x out of some of these things, or we need 1,000x out of some of these things. That's how we get to our average rate of return. But I think that the other institutional funds are going to look at the more tenured chains, and that's why you see BlackRock coming into like Bitcoin, and you see them coming into Ethereum, and they mentioned like Polkadot and I think Cardano as well, and a few others that may be like competitors to Ethereum. So maybe we should keep an eye on them because BlackRock could be eyeing them for an ETF, right? So like those are the ones, and BlackRock's not just going to say, well, hey, that new tech has faster transactions and like lower transaction costs. Everyone's going to move there. It's like, no, now some of the weight of the pendulum and the momentum of where we're heading is based upon, the past. So I think Ethereum has a good balance there. And I hope that there's still enough agility at the tip of the spear to get to exactly where we need to be. And I think there is.
I'm not going to take credit for this because this was brought up to my attention by Patrick, who's one of our community members. He's quote unquote expert in tokenomics, and his theory is that because of that financial institution money coming in from like BlackRock, the money isn't really going to trickle down past like the major coins that you have, the Bitcoins, the Ethereums, Solana, maybe Cosmos, those large caps. Do you think that could be the end to, new small projects coming onto the scene?
I don't know that I agree. I think, okay, I think that big money, the BlackRock with their trillions and trillions of dollars, yeah, they're only going to invest in the sort of like top tier L1s in the near term. But all of the people that currently hold those things are like the OG crypto folk. And we see this in a lot of cycles where like Bitcoin flies up and then you see a lot of the alts come in right after because they look like great buys. And it's because people who hold a lot of Bitcoin have extra liquidity. And they're like, you know what, let's see if I can be a little bit more reckless with some of these altcoins. And they're not all reckless, to be clear. I'm in a bunch myself because I think there is more potential gain there. But anyways, big money comes in Bitcoin level. I think current holders of cryptocurrency, as that liquidity comes in, will buy more of the secondary tokens. But you're right in that I don't see BlackRock buying, well, actually maybe Aave. I could see Aave happening or something like that. But it won't be direct, but there will be indirect roll down, I think, or at least it always has seemed that way to me. So I think it's net positive to have, again, we want to move liquidity on chain as a general rule because it's just better for humanity. And I think the more liquidity that comes on chain, the more that'll filter down, even if it's just from those of us who are already within the blockchain community that have investments, that do well.
Colin, this conversation flew by. I mean, it's been like 30 minutes. We covered real world assets. We talked about the overall state of the market. What is coming up for you personally with Freeport? What are you working on next?
Yeah. So assuming knocking on wood here, assuming all goes well, we'll complete the sale. I'll continue consulting for the new company. Well, the goal here is to actually form this entity will be formed net new that will take our technology into account. We'll have a new funds to purchase artwork. We'll continue sort of carrying the torch of Freeport, as it were, but with much more resources at our back, which sounds ideal. And then I've got one or two other little side projects that we can chat about the next time we get together.
Perfect. Where can people get in touch with you?
The easiest way is, on Farcaster is really where I'm most active, at kojo.eth. If you're not on Farcaster, you can actually go to weponder.io. That's another one of my side projects right now, and find me there, or just maybe hit up you, Mikhail, for my Telegram if there's a relevant conversation.
Sure. Yeah, I'll be sure to include those links in the description. Colin, thanks so much. This was a real pleasure. Enjoy that nice glass of vodka, whatever you got in there, and we'll talk again soon.
Cheers. Thanks, Mikhail.
Cheers.